Welcome. Today's we'll talk about overview of alliances forms, part 2. The outline we'll discuss other types of joint ventures, alliance constellations, and keiretsu. Other types of joint ventures. We have consortia that can be defined as joint ventures where more than two organizations participate. Consortia appear in industries where contractors decide to join forces for a limited period of time in order to jointly build a plant or an infrastructure facility. So consortia usually have a medium or even, well, anyway, limited period of time, and so medium-term objectives. And consortia are created in order to jointly build a plant or an infrastructure facility. So consortia have a very specific objective, and different parties agree to work together, to cooperate, only to reach that specific objective. After that, they completely stop cooperating. I mean, of course, they can establish a new consortia aimed to develop a new specific projects. Consortia are also found in industries where costs and risks associated to R&D projects are pretty high. Mixed joint ventures. They are established between an international company and the developing country government or developing country government agency or developing country government-controlled company. It's called the mixed joint ventures because it is established between an international company, which is usually a private company, and an organization in a developing country which is public, like the government itself or a government agency, or it is a state, it is controlled, the organization which is controlled by the government. The fact that one partner is the government or a government agency or a government-controlled company allows for the negotiation of particular conditions which would not be achievable by private business. I mean, from one side, the local organization, the government agency, the government itself, usually can have a higher negotiation power. On the other side, the international company can get some help, and the joint venture is stronger and can develop business in a better condition because in the joint venture the local government is directly involved and committed. Foreign investors may find different advantages in entering mixed joint ventures. Well, first of all, actually, mixed joint venture can be the only way to access restricted industries in the foreign country, and so the domestic government requires the international company to create a mixed joint venture to enter a certain kind of industry, because of course the domestic government wants to be part of the business, wants to maintain a certain kind of control of that industry. Mixed joint ventures also allow for level of foreign management and control that would not be permitted in an equity joint venture. And also, like other kind of joint ventures, mixed joint venture alleviate capital contribution difficulties. So they may reduce risks because the government's involvement in the deal deter non-compliance by the local partner. They might make easier the renegotiation of terms in the event of unexpected problems during the implementation. They can also improve foreign companies' reputation in the host country, because a foreign company works together, a public organization works together with the government, the domestic government. So it's clear it's a way to be friend, to be close and careful to the local development. And so the company's reputation can be improved. So from this point of view, a mixed joint venture with the domestic government or government agency is also a way to create good conditions for further development in the foreign country. Another kind of joint venture is restructuring joint ventures. Restructuring joint ventures mostly occur between multinationals in the context of their restructuring strategies. This kind of joint ventures are used when a company wants to alienate a non-core, maybe also underperforming business, while another company is willing to acquire it in order to access its technology, available distribution networks, to enter the business or whatever. So we have two parties. One party wants to alienate a business area because it is underperforming, or because it wants to focus. I mean, the company wants to focus in other business areas. On the other side, the other party is interested in strengthening its position in that business area. And so the structuring joint venture is clearly a phase of a process, first phase of a process which allows the second party to acquire the business from the first party. Joint venture is usually, because this phase is useful because it allows the two parties to understand in a better way the specific conditions and to prepare the final agreement for the merging or for the acquisition. While equity joint ventures are formed with long-term aims, restructuring joint ventures are designed for a limited duration, because they have the basic function to prepare a subsequent takeover by the acquiring company. So it allows to perimeter the business to be transferred, to rationalize costs, and to manage human resources issues, which are human resources issues are a very, very delicate point when there is a merging, and the joint venture, the restructuring joint venture, allows to start managing these issues and to develop new capabilities that will be required to develop the business in the future. there are relevant advantages over an outright sale of assets. It is easier to fix the right price, first of all, and it is easier to fix the right price because the two parties can have and can exchange information. They have access to information through the joint venture, and they can understand the real value of the business because, of course, they have information about the joint venture. It allows the acquiring company to make a better valuation, of course, considering the real or potential value of the business intended to be alienated. And also it is important that it is having a full access to knowledge of all tangible but also intangible worth of this prospective deal. The parties can ensure a smooth cooperation, mutual learning, and also developing mutual trust that reinforce the content of the transaction. The restructurer is motivated to give the joint venture the best technical assistance to ensure the success of the business and boost its selling value. On the other side, the buyer benefits of information that reduce uncertainties and risks, and it is easier to find a mutually convenient price. So in structuring joint ventures, the two parties are committed to reach the same kind of objective, which is basically to increase the value of the joint venture. This is relevant for the restructurer, I mean the company which wants to sell a certain business area, because of course the success of joint venture means a higher price of a higher value of the joint venture, so a higher price when it sells its stake in the joint venture. On the other side, the buyer, the company which in the second phase is expected to buy the whole joint venture, so the whole business, of course, as is interested in the success of the joint venture because it will manage that joint venture, that business in the long term. So it's very interesting because the two parties have the same kind of objective, and this is the key point, one of the most relevant condition to make a joint venture successful. Of course, the working together and exchanging information, it is also relevant in order to find the fair price, because there are no asymmetries in information and in knowledge, asymmetries between the two parties. So now we can have a review of the joint venture types. We talked about contractual joint ventures, short to medium-term business alliances set up to implement time-limited project. So companies develop an alliance, set up an alliance to implement specific projects in research, developing innovation, entering new markets, develop new products, whatever, which are usually time-limited projects. And the joint venture is based on a contract. Equity joint ventures are long-term partnerships that usually imply the creation of a new legal entity. So in equity joint venture, the parties, the partners, invest money because they create a new legal entity, a new firm, which is independent, even if not autonomous, from the parent companies, the companies which create the joint venture. And of course, the parent companies have to invest in the capital, in the equity of the new legal entity of the equity joint ventures. So it's clear that the link between the partners is stricter, and because they share risks, they share also financial risks, and the commitment to the success of joint venture is higher. Mixed joint ventures created by an international company and the local government or some local government agency, mostly in developing country or in emerging country. Restructuring joint ventures mostly happen between multinationals, usually two international big companies, in the context of their restructuring strategies. So mixed joint ventures are quite common for an international company which wants to enter in a developing country, and usually the domestic government allows the international company to enter in its country only through a joint venture. At the same time, it is important for the success of this joint venture, the presence of some public body, like the government itself, or a governmental agency, or also a domestic company which is owned by the state or by the government. This is very important for both parties, because from the point of view of the international company, a mixed joint venture usually is more accepted in the domestic environment by local stakeholders, and can have also some kind of support, so some kind of help, so that wouldn't be recognized to, wouldn't be given to private companies. On the other side, from the point of view of the domestic government, the mixed joint venture is important, is a very good solution to maintain a certain degree of control of the operations developed by the joint venture in the country, and so by maintaining this control, also assuring that the joint venture also pursue some public objectives, and so takes in consideration the needs of the local community. Restructuring joint ventures are a good tool to restructure business, and are usually established between companies that have a mutual objective. One of the party wants to sell a business area, while the other one wants to buy that business. And of course, the two parties could directly make a selling contract. I mean, the second party could buy directly the business the business area of the first party. The restructuring joint venture is a phase, is a way to start cooperating, and so developing a mutual trust, exchanging information, which is useful to find the right price at the end, and to maximize the value of the business which is sold. Alliance constellations. Alliance constellations are forms of conglomeration of allied enterprises which made their appearance in different historical and geographical contexts. So an alliance constellation is a group of usually many enterprises which cooperate under formal or sometimes also informal agreement to reach common objectives. Alliance constellations are also referred as a strategic network. We talked about networks in past lessons. We talked about global production networks established by a brand leader, a multinational, which is the hub of the network. Here, constellations are a different kind of networks because here we have a lot of enterprises, and quite often these enterprises are small companies or medium companies. They cooperate under formal, so I mean contractual agreement, but also under informal agreements. And informal agreements are based on mutual trust. This is key point. These enterprises, relevant number of enterprises, develop relevant mutual trust, and so they can cooperate also without with contractual agreement, which are quite simple, because they share common objectives and they have commitments in the success of the alliance. Competing in constellations has become typical in different industries and markets. And it has become typical in markets where there is a convergence of multiple technologies, and so it is required to be successful that different technologies are put together, are developed together, and so it's required to have the presence of different companies. Constellations are quite widespread also in industries where multiple components are used, or in markets where customers expect strong integration of the offer, for example in the intercontinental flights. In airline industry, alliance constellations usually include the following areas of collaboration: code sharing and coordination of flight schedules in order to optimize the connection among partners' flight, check-in services and integration, frequent flyers programs. Alliance constellation brings together partners with complementary resources, similar positioning in the market, common objectives, and similar managerial values. So it's important to understand that in order to develop an alliance constellation, it's required that companies have relevant similarities. And companies have to be complementary. They have to. It's important that companies have complementary resources, and it's important that they can share strategic objectives, and so they can develop commitment, concrete commitment in reaching constellations objectives. They also have to share managerial values, have the same kind of culture, the same kind of ethical attitude also, and of course they need to have similar positioning in the market, similar way of competing. similar way of reaching the competitive advantage. So in Allianz Constellation, we don't have, it's not important to compete to reach the competitive advantage through the value chain. It's more important to compete through a value system. It's not the company as a single entity which compete, while it's the constellation, the system of many companies that compete, that create value and compete. We have to clarify the difference between Allianz Portfolio and Allianz Constellations. Allianz Portfolio is set up and developed by a leading enterprise. It groups different alliances or groups of alliances. And Allianz is built around different activities or a range of products. Different alliances in an Allianz Portfolio are usually unrelated to each other. Especially multinationals have Allianz Portfolio. So a certain number of alliances with different kind of companies in different countries, with different kind of strategic objectives, and different alliances in the portfolios are usually unrelated to each other. While Allianz, and in Allianz Portfolio there is a leader, which is the multinational, which has this kind of Allianz Portfolio. Allianz Constellation serves a business strategy shared by all partners. So it's a network of partners, of companies that share common objective, that have common values, that have complementary resources, and that can understand that through the constellation, so through the alliance, they can be more competitive. They understand that it's better not to compete by alone, and so to be focused only on the value chain, on the company's value chain. It's much more effective to try to be part of a value system. Keiretsu. Keiretsu is a Japanese term that designates conglomerates of companies organized around a major bank. Keiretsu's companies are linked together by interlocking business relationships and shareholdings. So also Keiretsu is a kind of network. Keiretsu groups companies linked together by interlocking business relationships and shareholdings. Keiretsu's commercial companies have a cross-holding among themselves. High-level managers maintain long-term personal relationships, and the same person often serves as director on different companies' board. So it's very important, the links among companies which are part of a Keiretsu. These links are firstly assured by persons, by directors, because the same persons are usually directors on different companies' board. So the personal links are very, very relevant. There are many different areas of cooperation among Keiretsu's companies. First of all, providing financial assistance to each other, sharing market intelligence, supplying raw materials and components, exchanging technology. So we can see there are different areas of cooperation. Companies, Keiretsu's companies cooperate on production activities, for example, in supplying raw materials and components or in exchanging technology. Keiretsu's companies also cooperate at the financial level, because they provide the financial assistance to each other, and so they optimize financial resources. They also, companies also cooperate in marketing. They, for example, share information, market intelligence. Most part of Keiretsu take the form of horizontally integrated alliances across different industries, while some Keiretsu also have a certain degree of vertical integration. So usually most part of alliances are of horizontal kind of alliance, while there are also some vertical kind of alliance. The big six Japanese Keiretsus are Mitsubishi, Mitsui, Sumitomo, Fujo, Daiichi Kanjo, and Sanwa. And the leading bank, because the hub of Keiretsu is also a bank, you see it's Mitsubishi UFJ Bank, Sumitomo Mitsui Bank, again Sumitomo Mitsui Bank, Mizuho Bank, and so on. And we can see some of the major group companies, and here we can recognize some of leading Japanese multinationals. And it's interesting because in the last decades, some Keiretsu merged, and so at the end, very few banks, Japanese banks, control the biggest Keiretsus. Although the Keiretsu concept and organizational model is typically Japanese, they were born in Japan, they are one of the key aspects of the Japanese industrial system. Some comparable models have developed also in other regions. For example, the Virgin Group in the United States is a conglomerate built around the Virgin brand and led by Virgin Atlantic Airways. So Virgin Group operates a varied set of companies. It's a conglomerate. The group is very much diversified in different industries. And they, of course, companies of the group compete worldwide. The main difference is that there is not a bank at the core of the group. Another interesting example is Tata Group. It was founded more than a century years ago as a textile trader. It has strongly diversified its operations over the years. At present, it comprises more than 90 companies in 7 industries. Tata Group developed also many international joint ventures, also with multinationals which were born in developed countries. And so Tata Group, through this joint venture, has developed also in Europe and United States. And the group is controlled by an holding company. So it's kind of internal network of companies. Companies of the group can share technology, can share knowledge, and at the same time they exchange knowledge with external companies through joint ventures, also through other kind of international alliances. So we can summarize. We discussed the different kind of joint venture. It's interesting because we have so many different forms of joint ventures that are established to reach different kind of objectives. Joint ventures are very much widespread in developed countries between multinationals, for example, restructuring joint ventures. But also we have more and more joint ventures established by medium or even small enterprises, especially in order to enter foreign markets. Joint ventures are very important also as a organizational model to enter foreign markets, and so we have many joint ventures between an international company and a domestic company in an emerging or developing country. And in certain number of these countries, joint ventures are required by domestic government, and in some cases we have a mixed joint venture where the domestic government or government agency is one of the party of the joint venture, so it invests in the joint venture together with the international company. We also have a contract joint venture or equity joint venture. Equity joint venture is very important because it's the financial investment, which is the key point of an equity joint venture. The financial investment strengthens the alliance and assures the real long-term commitment of the parties and the will of the parties to make the joint venture really successful.